Going on, Falcon fan? This your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. We are 12 days away from the start of the NFL training camp for our Atlanta Falcons on the 27th. Hopefully see some of you guys at the high school there. We can get this thing kicked off this season. But once again, guys, it's a Falcon fan talk Monday. Today we're gonna have a question of the day, and the question of the day will be, um, will the pass rush improve under defensive coordinators Jimmy Lake? That's the question of today. Hopefully, we're going to find out. Um, a lot of things to talk about with that. We know we lost both our top two pass rushers, to NFL free agency. We got a new defensive coordinator, got a new defensive scheme. So it's going to be interesting to see how Jimmy Lake is going to be able to um, keep the momentum that we had, last year. If you go back 2 years before that, the Atlanta Falcons had 18 sacks, 21 sacks. So last year they doubled the sacks up to 42 sacks. But the pass rush is going to be a big thing. It's a passing lead now. Everybody knows that. If you look at our schedule, we do have some quarterbacks that like to throw the ball around. So the Atlanta Falcons have to be able to, get to the quarterback, create that pass rush, and we definitely going to see how Jimmy Lake, along with Raheem Morris, scheme things up to see can we get to the quarterback. So, guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you know I drop another video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come in here and talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So, like I said, guys, the question of today is the Atlanta Falcons pass rush. That's what it all boils down to. Um, can the Atlanta Falcons continue to improve in their pass rush? All right. So let's be honest, guys. When we talk about pass rush, and if you look at a team, it always comes down to big name guys. Um, if you look around the league, it's always a dominant pass rusher on NFL teams, right? The Atlanta Falcons, unfortunately, have not been able to get that dominant pass rusher since probably John Abraham, since he left the team. They had one anomaly one season in 2016. Of course, with Big Beasley came to town, and he had 16 sacks. But like I said, that was an anomaly, right? We haven't seen anything like that in years since then, and for the most part, the Atlanta Falcons pass rush has been anemic. But when you look around the league, it's all about the big name guys, right? If you look at the top five pass rushers last season, the defensive coordinator and Myles Garrett. We have Michael Parson, you have Nick Bosa, you have um, um, Crosby, and then you have T.J. Watt, who we get to see the first game of the season. But those are top five guys, all big name guys. They consistently is in double digit sacks. They consistently bringing that pass rush, and that's what the Atlanta Falcons need to do. They need to go out and somehow, some way, get that dominant pass rusher. Now, it's not because it's not an effort. We know the Atlanta Falcons have been trying. Last year, they tried to make a trade, but lost out to the Chicago Bears. They tried to get Danielle Hunter this year, but he decided to go home back to Houston. They struck out on that. We all assumed that they were going to go get a pass rusher in the NFL draft. However, according to their board, pass rushers that was there was not, value as high as when they decided to do it and go get Michael Penix. So they decided not to go get a pass rusher in this year's draft. You know, so it's really going to be interesting to see how the Atlanta Falcons decide to, formulate this pass rush again. Now, 42 sacks last season. It's a big improvement from the season before, right? But we do have to remember that was under Ryan Nielsen's defense, right? Once again, like I said, you had Bud Dupree, Calais Campbell, who was here. they only had 6.5 sacks apiece, so it's not like they really came out and dominated as either. But they were our two leading sack getters for the Atlanta Falcons last year, and both of those guys are gone. So the Atlanta Falcons now got to try to create new pass rush with the guys that the young guys that they brought in and the guys that's been on the team, right? And that goes to the question about development, right? So the Atlanta Falcons is going to have to rely heavily on player development. Guys like Armor Ebiketie, right? We got to see where Armor Ebiketie, this is have to be his year. He has to, that switch has to cut off for him. He needs to be a double-digit sack guy. It's probably no other way to look at it. Like I said, you can get sacks so many different ways. You saw the Atlanta Falcons did last year. They got 42 sacks. Nobody was over 6.5 sacks. But if we want to be able to establish ourselves as a good team to be able to get at the quarterbacks, I think Armor Ebiketie needs to take the next level. He has to be that guy. Second round pick. The Atlanta Falcons moved up to get him. He has to be the guy that takes the next step. That jump from year 2 to year 3 has to be huge for him. We definitely going to see what Armor Ebiketie going to do. They also retained Lorenzo Carter, who seeing his snaps kind of limited last year because of Bud Dupree, but he has to produce some kind of what's going on, Kendrick? I ain't seen you in a long time, man. Talking about these Falcons, man. Old buddy from Washington County High. He played center for us. He was pretty good. Our 1995 state champs. At that time, we had the most records, most points scored, for a championship team. I think it's been broke since then, but that's at that time. I think I kind of told my age too when I said 1995. All right. Anyway, but but guys, like I was saying about this pass rush, Armor Ebiketie has to be the guy. Lorenzo Carter has to be that guy. Now the Atlanta Falcons went out and they invested heavily in the defensive front this draft, right? Everybody was all up in arms because they took Michael Penix at number 8. But what they decided to do, they decided to triple down, quadruple down, in the remainder of the draft on the defensive front. They went and got Brandon Dorless. They went and got Ruka Roro. They went and got Zion Lowe, and they went and got Braylon Trice, right? So they definitely was thinking and taking emphasis in this pass rush in the defensive front to try to be able to create, that quarterback to get him off his spot, things like that. So that's what's going on, EQ, right? So that's what Atlanta Falcons, they really invested this year on their front. But at the end, guys, I mean, just the biggest thing that the Atlanta Falcons need to do, they got to go out and get a guy, right? And that's really what it boils down to. They have to get a guy. If they don't get a guy, we always gonna have this conversation. The last time Atlanta Falcons had a guy was John Abraham. We know this, right? I just talked about the top 5 guys, right? You got, you top Myles Garrett, Michael Parsons, Nick Bosa, right? Matt Crosby, right? You got TJ Watt. Those guys are guys, right? You can go on down the list. Every team has a guy. The Atlanta Falcons need to find their guy, right? Armor Ebiketie, can he be that guy? We don't know, right? 6 sacks last year, wasn't as it's an improvement, right? You see the growth and improvement, but this year has to be that year, right? Because if not, the Atlanta Falcons is going to have to try to do what they did last year and generate, pressures and try to get to the quarterback in other ways, right? Nobody had over 6.5 sacks last year. We need one guy they're going to have to focus on, and if you do that, it opens up for everybody else. That's what all those other guys that I just talked about, that's what they do for their team. They create, havoc, right? They're on every team's game plan. They got to stop that guy. Now, do we have guys like that? Yes, right. You got guys in the middle. You got guys like Grady and David Amanyala. I'm pretty sure when offenses are game planning for the week, they're penciling in those guys and trying to figure out how to stop those guys. But I'm talking about that dominant guy that's out on the end that really needs to come out and do this thing. Travis Preston says Washington County got on my nerves back in the day. The House of Pain was real. It was, man. It was the House of Pain, man. You know, they put those crosses out there every team we beat. And I ain't gonna lie, man, we was pretty good in '95. We was pretty good. I don't think any games were close. Um, we had one game, and I think it was against Mary Persons, and they ran the kickoff back. First play of the game, they ran the kickoff back, and then the very next play, the kickoff return, our starting running back, Errol Swint, guess what he did? He ran it back, tied the game 7-7, and we didn't look back. I think that was the only game where we might have been down in a game in that season. We was just complete dominant in that season. I know they saying that teams from somewhere else probably could have beat us because we was Division 2, but I'm telling you right now, I don't care if you was 6A, 4A, 5A, 6A, 7A, it don't matter. You was not beating the Washington County Golden Hawks in 1995. It wasn't happening. I'm just telling you that right now. Right? And we got a guy that actually went to the NFL, played in the NFL 15 years from that team. He was All-American on defense and offense, and that was Takeo Spike. So that was a pretty good team, and I tell you it was. It was a well-oiled machine. And we in the history books, man. Go look for it. If you go to the Georgia Dome, go to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and you look at all those helmets up there, the Mercedes-Benz Stadiums, you'll actually see WC state champion. They got all the state champions up there, and we was the first ones to actually put one up there, 1995. Now Washington County went on a run after that, right? Because the program was good, and shout out to Coach Tomlin, our head coach at the time. But that was the start of it, and we ran havoc. There you go. All right, guys. So really, when we start talking about pass rush, right? The biggest thing about pass rush is pressures. It's quarterback pressures, right? And what I mean when I talk about quarterback pressure. So I did a it's probably last year when I talk about pressures, right? Because you always hear coaches say the sack numbers is not the most important thing, which is true. Sacks look good, they're sexy. When you look at sacks, you do look at sacks and you be like, hey, if you got 20 sacks, you might be doing some things. That's true. That's neither here nor there. Sacks are very important. But what is really important to when you talking about pass rush is the pressures. That's where it boils down to. We talking about pressures on the quarterback. When you rush the quarterback, you make him hurry up, you get him off his spot, right? And you can get him on the ground, you cause turnovers. That's where pressures is important, right? The more pressures you get, the more havoc you can create. That's what the Atlanta Falcons need to work on. And when they were talking about pass rush, yes, you want to see the sack numbers go up, but what you really want to see, and if you really want to know how a player can wreck a game, it's all about the pressures. So when I talk about pressure, guys, those five guys that I mentioned, that's in the top 5 pass rushers that was listed last year. Myles Garrett, right? He had 89 pressures last year, just 89. Michael Parsons had 106 pressures, right? Think about that, 106 pressures. Nick Bosa had 122 pressures last year, right? 122 pressure. Max Crosby had 94 pressures, and TJ Watt had 86. That's just one person, guys. One person on their team generate those pressures. You know how many pressures the Atlanta Falcons had as a team last year? 148 pressures. Now, Michael Parsons had 106 by himself. The Atlanta Falcons had 148 pressures as a team last year. So that's where pressures is probably the most, right? If you go look at how many sacks Michael Parsons had, probably didn't have, the outlandish number of sacks. He had sacks, but those 106 pressures, that means he put pressure on the quarterback 106 times last year, which you rush the quarterback, you either get him off his spot, you get a sack, cause a fumble, mess up his timing, all kind of things. 106 times. Nick Bosa, 122 pressures, right? Almost match what the Falcons had as a team, 148. The pressure, guys, is what's important. That's what we need to do. That's what the Atlanta Falcons need to focus on, right? How to create pressures, on the quarterback. That's when you look at the scheme, when you do the stunts, right? You do the stunts. You do those late blitzes, right? The safety blitz, the corner blitz. You got to create pressure some way. If you don't have that guy, like these teams we talking about, guy, right? You got to be able to create pressure some way. But 148 is not going to cut it, right? They have to be able to improve their pressures. That's where what's the downfall for this Atlanta Falcon team is their pressures. They're not generating enough pressures, right? And then if you go look at individual guys, right? Bud Dupree, and Calais Campbell, guess what? They had the most pressures, right? They had the most sacks, 6.5 sacks a piece. They had the most pressures as well, but they only had 24 pressures a piece. That's sad, right? I just said Michael Parsons had 106, right? Our guys that led the team with the most pressures had 24 pressures, right? And neither one of those guys are on the team anymore. So think about that. Neither one of those guys are on the team anymore, right? Armor Ebiketie, who had 6 sacks, right? He had half a sack less than the other two guys. He had 16 pressures, right? Got to generate more pressures. I'm trying to figure out how is this possible. Carter had 11 pressures. Grady, we know Grady got hurt. He had 10 pressures last year. Dave Amayada had 21 pressures, right? So the inside pressures, that's decent, but you got to increase those number. And then Zach Harrison, who came in started to flash last year, he only had 9 pressures, right? We got to be able to create pressures, and that's not enough. That's not enough. So whatever Jimmy Lake is going to do, whatever Raheem Morris is going to scheme up, it has to be better than it was last year. That 148 pressures is not going to cut it, right? Especially if you got an individual on another team almost generating that many pressures by himself, right? And we looking at the team as a whole, for the Atlanta Falcons that only had 148. So that is something that the Atlanta Falcons need to work on. Now, what's interesting, right? When I talk about pressures, right? The Atlanta Falcons drafted Braylon Trice last year in the NFL draft, right? Braylon Trice had the most pressures out of all the guys that went before him in that draft, right? He had more pressures than Latu, who had 62 pressures. He had more pressures than Verse, who had 62 pressures. He had more pressures than Dallas Turner, who had 54 pressures, right? Braylon Trice had 80 pressures last year. 80 pressures last year. Now, if some of that can translate to the NFL, right? Levels, it's levels to this, right? So you're going from college to pro. So you don't expect him to come in and dominate like that and have 80 pressures again. But if he can translate some of that motor that he has, because that's the reason why he created so much pressure, because he kind of said he kind of modeled his game out for a guy like Max Crosby, right? Just relentless, right? Gonna go. It's not gonna stop. That's what you got to do. That's how you create those pressure. That's why you see Michael Parsons, right? Motor going. But you got a guy like Braylon Trice here that had 80. What's up, fam? You got a guy, Braylon Trice had 80 pressures, right? He had more pressures than any of those guys. A lot too, and he had more pressures than Dallas Turner, who a lot of people had mocked to the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. Braylon Trice had the most pressures, right? Can he create pressures in the NFL? Want to find out. Can they scheme him up to be able to do that? Can he generate more pressures? 148 pressures for this team is not going to cut it, right? They have to be able to create more of that. I mean, it's when you look at it, you wonder how the Atlanta Falcons won 7 games, right? When you see, like I said, Myles Garrett 89 pressures alone, Michael Parsons 106 pressures alone, Nick Bosa 122 pressures alone, right? Max Crosby 94 pressures, right? TJ Watt 86. The Atlanta Falcons had 148 as a team, right? So if you ain't got that guy, at least produce the pressures with the team as a collective, right? And the Atlanta Falcons didn't even do that last year. So the pressures is what the Atlanta Falcons need to try to create. And however they do it, scheme, they can, call it different stunts, the cover blitzes, because you're in the 3-4, right? We need to try something, guys. It doesn't make any sense for Atlanta Falcons to not be able to pressure the quarterback. These quarterbacks will eat you alive if you're not putting pressure on them, if you're not getting them off their spot, you're not interrupt their timing, right? You're not rushing them, right? If you don't do that, right, and then you look at our secondary, you're like, why our secondary is so bad? Because the quarterback got all day, they're not getting pressure. That's the reason why. 330 says, what's up, Connor? Trice has a Euro step off the edge. Blocker's going to have to really have good feet. Yes, you're 100% correct, man. Like I like Trice, but for one reason I like him. Now the reason why he went, because scouts and what they do, right? They look at the athleticism, and they look at all the stuff at the combine and things like that, right? That's why Dallas Turner, right, was selected to go so high, because he had all the traits, he had the link, right? He had all that stuff. But I think Dallas Turner was more of a project, and a guy like Braylon Trice, a guy like Latu was more polished, a guy that can come in right away, right? And now that ceiling probably is not as high as a Dallas Turner, right? Because of his athleticism and the traits that he had. But a guy like Braylon Trice is going to come in, and I think he's going to be able to wreak some havoc. I really do. I really believe that Braylon Trice is going to be able to come in. Now it's going to take good coaching, right? Because these NFL tackles are good, man. Like that's why they get paid the big bucks, man. These NFL tackles are really good, and you can't come in, with those cupcake moves that you had in college and think it's gonna work. It's not gonna work, right? You're gonna get frustrated, right? They just gonna stay in them arms out. They're gonna move those puppies. They're gonna move those feet, and they're gonna keep you off their quarterback. That's what they do, right? Even a guy like Jake Matthews, who been in the league 10 years, right? Ain't one of the best, left tackles in the world, but he hold his own. He's been doing it for 10 years, right? So just imagine you go up against the all pro tackles, guys like Trent Williams and things like that. You're not winning those. You got to come with it. You got to be able to. But one thing that you can do what Michael Parsons do what Nick Bosa does, Max Crosby, TJ Watt. They continue to put pressure, right? The more pressures you get, the more opportunities you have to get to the quarterback, to get him off his spot, to interrupt the timing, the things like that. That's what you got to do, right? Now, the Atlanta Falcons drafted 2 more guys in the draft. And they generated a couple pressures themselves. You look at a guy like Brandon Dorlus from Oregon, right? Believe it or not, he was a pretty good pass rusher. He had 46 pressures last year. That's not bad. That's pretty good for a guy that they had moved him up. He kind of played in a little bit. Gonna be interesting where they decide to put him at. I think they're gonna probably use him in the end. like probably where they're gonna use Grady at the end as well. Um, and then you got Rucororo, who they moved up in the second round to get him out of Clemson. He had 33 pressures. Now, did you say, well, that's not a lot, but where he played at, right? He played right in that middle. Probably got double teamed a lot, things like that. But that's pretty good, right? So developing those young guys, which I think is going to be important for the Atlanta Falcons this year. Those guys got to be able to make contributions this year. The Atlanta Falcons going to do anything, right? You got three guys that you drafted, right? That you want them to be able to contribute this year. Now the Atlanta Falcons have a deep defensive line, and if you guys go back to when I did the 53-man roster breakdown, and I was trying to figure out who's going to be in, who's going to be out, right? It's a deep line. It really is. I like all the bodies that's there, but they're gonna have to figure this out. That's why training camp is going to be so exciting this year, because you got some old guys there that don't want to let the young guys take them out. Guys like Eddie Goldman, who's coming back for the third time from retirement, right? Got Contavious Street, a guy that we brought back, right? Taquan Graham, a guy who's been here that don't want to get cut, right? Um, then you have the guys who we think going to be the guys. You got Grady, you got David Amiyata, you got Zach Harrison, right? And then those three guys you talked about, Trice, who's probably going to be more outside linebackers, competing with Armor Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter. But those guys those guys going to have to bring dividends. I mean, it's just simple as that. Now, Zion Lowe, the guy they picked in the 6th round out of the University of Georgia, is a big dude. He's a huge dude, right? And he took on a lot of double teams when he was in the University of Georgia. His stats don't show that he was a dominant guy. However, taking double teams on, you free up your linebackers. That's what you do, right? Sometimes you do all the dirty work, and then somebody clean up on the back end, and that's your job when you're taking on double teams, right? Because if you're taking two, that means you freeing up from one of your other guys. So that's what Zion Lowe did. It's going to be really tough for him to make the team because, like I said, his defensive front is so deep. But I like him. I like his size. Like I said, guy who's 310 pounds, that big of a man. You see the potential there. You see why they went and got him, and you understand why the Atlanta Falcons, invested in the defensive front. One reason because we got two guys that's still playing really good football, and Grady and David, but they're over the 30 mark, so you got to be looking towards the future. I'm not saying those guys gonna fall off or anything like that, but you got to start looking for the future. That's why you go get a guy like Aruka Roro. You get a guy like Brandon Dorlish, right? Get a guy like Zion Lowe, right, to come in to help, get that depth where you want it to be. And if these guys can pick up quick and learn this defense, right, you can have that great rotation of fresh bodies in and out. Sort of like what Ryan Nielsen tried to do last year, but every time Ryan Nielsen put that second team in, it did not fare as well as we wanted it to. It just didn't. I mean, really, what it really boils down to, it just did not go the way we wanted it to. So, hopefully, we'll be better this year. We still want to be able to stop the run, right? I think that should be a staple in a defense. You got to be able to stop the run. You want to make the team one dimension. You want to make them pass the ball so you can get to those pressures that I talked about. And it's going to be hand in hand, right? Complementary football, right? We expect our offense to score a lot of points, right? And offense score a lot of points. That means potentially your opponent could be playing from behind, which they're gonna have to pass the ball, right? And that helps the Atlanta Falcons create, advantageous, points where they can actually start to do the pass rushing. That's what we want, right? So hopefully we can get to that. We just have to see how it's going to work out. But guys, the pressures are the most important thing um, for this Atlanta Falcon team, right? And when I just look through the numbers, I'm not gonna lie, I was embarrassed when I seen that Nick Bosa had 122 pressures and Atlanta Falcons had 148 as a team, right? That means you're killing your secondary. You're not helping out the back end at all, right? Because you're not getting pressures. That means you're asking your guys in the back end to cover longer, right? And then when they're getting beat, right, you looking at them like you keep getting beat, but you're not getting pressure on the quarterback. He's sitting back there just picking you apart. So yes, the 42 sacks are nice, right? Especially when Atlanta Falcons had 21 the year before, and the year before that 18, right? So, you see, you like, well, they played a lot better last year. And they did. They really did. If you go look at the points, how many points they gave up a game, then they gave up like 20 points a game. That's not bad at all, right? Bend don't break, that's great. Yardage and all that stuff. I guess that's where the Atlanta Falcons excelled at. They didn't give up a lot of points. They maybe gave up a lot of yards, but when it came down to red zone defense and things like that, they was able to hold up for the most part because we did not give up a lot of points last year. So that is a good thing, right? But you know, being able to get the quarterback off his spot, being able to rush the quarterback, being able to create turnovers, right? That's what you're trying to do. So, um, what's going on, Gat Box? What's going on, man? What's going on? What's going on? Right? That's what you're trying to do. You got to be able to start to try to create those pressures, man. Right? Braylon Trice, 80 pressures last year. I think it's going to be huge, right? I don't want to forget about D'Angelo Malone. Yes, he came from Western Kentucky in college, but he created a lot of pressures as well in college. Now, he has not had his opportunity in NFL, right? He has not had his opportunity in NFL. Now, usually, if you're not doing anything in practice and taking advantage of the opportunity you get in practice, you're never going to get they're not never going to get to see what you can do. So I'm not sure, is he getting his opportunity in practice? What is the deal with that? But I definitely want to see if D'Angelo Malone can have any, bring anything to this team as well. A guy that we all, were really high on because the way he was able to pressure the quarterback when he was in college. Yes, it was at Western Kentucky, but he was really, really good at doing that. So let's see what D'Angelo Malone can do. Um, I think we know what Lorenzo Carter is. I thought he was one of the guys that they was actually going to cut. They could have saved $3 million there, but they decided to bring him back. He's a Georgia guy, right? You know, he's a couple years removed from his ACL. Maybe this is the year. He did take less snaps last year because of Bud Dupree, so maybe he'll get more snaps this year. But I think he's going to be competing with Braylon Trice on the other side of the outside linebacker because I think Armor Ebiketie has this spot. I think Braylon Trice and Lorenzo Carter is going to be competing for the other spot. So let's see the best man win there. Kendra says, with no pressures, you have no idea if your secondary is good or terrible. 100%. And one of the big questions about this Atlanta Falcon team this year is that number 2 corner, right? We don't know who's going to be their number 2 corner right now, right? We think it might be Clark Phillips III, right? Yes, he's not as tall as a quarterback, but he's really good, man. He's really good, and I think playing more zone this year is going to help Clark Phillips. Right, he played a lot of man last year, and you see him get baptized a couple of times. Welcome to the NFL moments that he had. He got big boyed a little bit, but I think his instincts, the things he showed when he was at the University of Utah, I think he's going to be able to come out more if you put him in the right kind of defensive scheme. And like I said, that's playing zone, being able to read and react, read the quarterback, and make plays. This guy had six pick sixes, while he was in college. So this guy is really good. He is something that he can do. So he could potentially be the number 2, right? We got Mike Hughes out there. You got Kevin King coming off of injury. They got Antonio Hamilton. You got D. Alford. Um, so we don't know who's going to be the number two. We do know that AJ Terrell is going to be on the other side, um, and we know we got in the back, and Jesse Bates the third. We got him back there. I think DeMarco Helms probably is going to end up being that strong safety taking over for Richard Grant. We don't know that yet, so we'll just have to see. We just have to see, right? Um, Now this what could happen, right? Because a lot of free agents still out there. A lot of free agents that pretty talented still out on the market, right? So the Atlanta Falcons get into the first week of training camp, and they might not like what they see, right? They're giving their guys opportunity to 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 show what they got and put it all out there to compete, right? But we're trying to win. So if these guys not able to get it done, it's guys out there on the market that Atlanta Falcons can go and I think could be upgrades, right? But you want to be able to utilize your guys, the guys that you drafted, guys that you believed in, guys that just been here with you, during the whole offseason program. You're going to give them the opportunity to go out and compete. That's good. We definitely going to see Raheem Morris believe in his staff. He believe in his ability to get the best out of these guys, and that's what coach is all about. A lot of my last podcast last Monday was about coaching, right? And you have to be able to coach as well, right? You got to get these guys to make them do, be the best version of themselves, right? That's why I talk about Clark Phillips when he's best version of himself, probably playing a little bit more zone coverage, right? Um, and that's his strength. Richard Grant, best things he do is a downhill safety, not good in coverage. Maybe you don't want to use them that way, right? You got to be able to use guys the best way they can, right? To take them to help the team. So that's what you're gonna do, right? Everybody is not a Bijan can do everything, right? Everybody's not that guy. So you got to be able to put guys in spots for them to be successful. And that's what coaching is all about. So we'll definitely find that out. But guys, when we're talking about um the pass rush, we talk about Jimmy Lake. The one thing that's really good about this Atlanta Falcon team this year, right? We're looking at the glass half full because that's what I always do, is that we don't know what kind of defense it's going to be because we haven't seen it yet, right? It's like we don't know the offense, right? We think we know what the offense is going to be, right? We got different personnel, right? We don't know how Zach Robinson is going to deploy those guys, right? We don't know how Jimmy Lake's going to deploy his defense. So it's really going to be interesting to see, how this defense is formulated, right? I mean, if you look at a guy like Raheem Morris and his defensive background, um, it's extensive. It really is. So he started out with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Tampa 2. Rest in peace, Money Kiffin. That Tampa 2, we know how good that defense was when you two great linebackers, right? Um, and backs had to be good, right? Because you had two good linebackers in the middle that played the deep, right? You had to be able to put the ball in spaces because of that cover two defense, right? That's where Raheem Morris came from, right? Right. Being with Dan Quinn for what, 5, 6 years? Um, and the cover three, right? Had a different defense that he utilized, right? So you had that defense that he utilized, right? Then he went to the Rams, right? A hybrid, a mix of defense. And so a lot of different ways he can go with how this Atlanta Falcons defense is going to be built, right? Right. Then they have to go look and see what Jimmy Lake did in college. He's never been a defensive coordinator in the pros, right? And last year was an offensive assistant with the Rams. So um it's really going to be interesting to see what this defense is really going to look like for these Atlanta Falcons. I mean, that's the mystery, right? And the fact that, as fans, we usually get like 8 or 9 open practices. We're only gonna get 2 this year. We're gonna be in the dark too. I think preseason is gonna be so vanilla. We're definitely not going to know what kind of scheme they're running, because coaches never want to show their hand. So that's going to be interesting to see. But looking at this defense, it's going to be really interesting. The Cowboy fans showing up late. What did he say? Talking in circles a little condo. Go America's team. Tampa 2 is about 7P with zone prototype DB. If you go to the Tampa 2, they had one good corner. Matter of fact, if you look at Raheem Morris, most of his defense, he always had only one good corner, right? That's why I think he believes what he can do with this team, right? Because he go to the Rams, he had a Jalen Ramsey. He had a Barber when he was with the Tampa, right? Here in Atlanta, we had a Desmond Trufant. We had a Robert Alford. We had those guys, right? But he always had one good corner on one side, right? But whatever scheme he's going to run, mixture of Tampa 2, mixture of hybrid 3-4-4-3, whatever he's going to run, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be good, right? Only good thing I got to say about the Cowboys, I kind of pumped up Michael Parsons, man. 106 pressures. That's impressive. He had the most pressures in the league last year, behind Nick Bosa, of course. Nick Bosa had 122. Michael Parsons has 106. That's impressive. So that means they continuous put pressures on the quarterback. I really like that. Atlanta Falcons had 148 total. So that's not good. When you look at one player on teams, almost could match that from a pressure standpoint. So the Atlanta Falcons either get that guy, right? Go find your guy, right? The last time they had a guy was John Abraham, right? Go get a guy, or they gonna have to manufacture pressures to be able to get out to the quarterback. They did a decent job last year from the eyeball test, right? But you look at the numbers, they did not do as good as well. We probably thought they did, because 148 pressure is not really that good, right? So they got to do better. And then just to think the two guys that had the most pressures on the team is no longer with the team is kind of giving you, cause for pause. Like, okay, how good is the defense going to be? And I think it's going to have to boil down to coaching, right? Because you got a lot of young guys that they brought in the draft. You want to see player development improvement from guys like educated guys like Zach Harrison. You want to see if Lorenzo Carter can get back to form, kind of what he looked like the first year we had him here with Atlanta. That's what you want to be able to see. If you don't see any of those things, the Atlanta Falcons are going to be in for a long season, trying to get up to quarterbacks, and they're going to make the secondary play hard. So that's not what I want. So he's running a complex base D now to keep up with today's scheme. You don't know what he running. How you know what he running? You don't know what he running. You said Jesse Tuggle, the best ever. Yes, I would. I can rock with that. The Hammer probably was one of the best Falcons ever. I'm not going to even try to disagree with you on that, right? If you want to just put down the best players ever in a uniform, right? I'm gonna have to put prime time in there, but didn't play that many years, right? The best Falcon ever is Matt Ryan, hands down, right? He's the best Falcon ever. But Jesse Tuggle is right up there, right? He played his entire career with the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know why he's not in the Hall of Fame. If you go look at his numbers, it's ridiculous that he's not there. But yes, Jesse Tuggle, the Hammer, is there. He said the best thing you said is the truth. He did not retire as a Cowboy. He retired as a Falcon. Why you keep saying that? He did not retire as a Cowboy. He retired as a Falcon, man. He retired as Atlanta Falcon. Stop saying that. he won a Super Bowl with you guys. He won the Super Bowl with the 49ers too. But Deion Sanders did not retire as a Cowboy. He did not. He retired as an Atlanta Falcon. So he did not retire as a Cowboy. Y'all got y'all Hall of Famers. This. Congratulations. But yeah, Deion Sanders did not retire as a Cowboy. So, but guys, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. I think it was real informative from my standpoint, doing my research, looking and talking about pressures tonight. I thought the Atlanta Falcons actually had a better season, but looking at numbers, it was really pedestrian, to be honest with you. And for them to hold teams to 20 points a game, I think that was impressive in itself. They did double up their sack numbers from the season before with 42. No player on the team had more than 6.5 sacks. So they did it by committee, right? So kudos to Ron Nielsen and the coaching staff last year to be able to do the things that they was able to do. But we have to improve, right? Now we do expect offense to be able to score more than 19 points a game, with the addition of Kirk Cousins, but we got to be able to put pressure on the quarterback, right? And if you're looking at the schedule, there's some good quarterbacks that we're gonna have to play this season, right? We got to play Jalen Hurts. We got to play, Pat Mahomes, which is who's just straight up dynamic. We got to play him, right? We got to play a couple of rookies, right? So it's going to be interesting to see. Baker Mayfield has actually really improved. And I think he may have found a home. Now, it's interesting, Baker Mayfield, his offensive coordinator left. It's going to be interesting to see if he learned a new offense there. Bryce Young is learning a new offense again. We'll see if he'll be able to get it going. They did go invest in offensive linemen for Bryce Young this year, so we'll have to see how that turn out. Not really worried about Derek Carr that much. He never really impressed me, and I don't like the Aints anyway, so I'm not gonna give them any props. But but we do got some good quarterbacks that Atlanta Falcons got to face this year, so it's gonna be interesting for us to get it done. Look at him, Georgia, Texas. Man, hey man, give me a call, man. Cause I don't know where you at. What you do? Tampa Bay is not winning the NFC South. We put some money on that too if you want to. We put some money on it. Just let me know. They're not winning the NFC South. All right. So guys, that's all I had. I really enjoyed you talking. Hey, 12 days, guys. 12 days, right? To get this thing rolling, right? Been slow. I've been just coming in on Mondays, doing the Falcon fan talk, but it's going to get going, guys. Believe me. We're going to start having a lot of more Falcon content coming out here, starting to get in. Right. I still got to give my predictions because I have not gave my predictions for the season yet. So just hold off on that. I'm going to give you my predictions. I don't like the schedule. I don't like the start of the schedule. That's why I decided not to give it because I got to see what's going to happen, right? But I'm gonna give my final 53-man roster prediction before the training camp starts. Then towards the end, of course, we'll try to figure out who's actually going to be on to make that 53-man roster, and then the 16 practice squad as well. So we'll kind of see what's been going on through training camp, right? So many different storylines that we're going to start talking about, to the cornerback competition, to the strong safety competition, to the competition. Who's going to end up being that middle linebacker? You got Landman, you got Anderson coming back, right? Who's going to make that defensive front? Definitely going to see that. We're going to see how some of these receivers emerge, right? Only 2 receivers returning from last year. So we got new receivers there. See who's going to be emerge. I don't know if you've been looking how good Kyle Pitts been looking at his workout, how good Bijan been looking at his workouts. Those guys is destined to have breakout seasons, right? How Raheem Morris gonna get these guys ready to go week 1 against those Pittsburgh Steelers in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So we got a lot of storylines coming up. Arthur Smith coming back, first game of the season, right? So this is going to be an exciting season, guys. Nothing less than a playoff berth for the Atlanta Falcons is what what is going to take, and we don't get that, it's a failure. Just simple as that. They have to get to make it to the playoffs. I'm not talking Super Bowls, but they need to make it to the playoffs this year, right? I think this team is talented enough to do it, even with the 148 pressures that I just talked about, for the last 45 minutes. But I think this Atlanta Falcon team is capable enough to at least win their division. So we'll just have to see. So just like Ryan Collins said, we're going to take it, and I believe we are too. So guys, that's all I have. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Be ready. 12 days, guys. 12 days. That's where we got. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.